Good to have you with us tonight. Some in the tourism sector can breathe a sigh of relief. This after government launched the Tourism Equity Fund today. The sector has been one of the hardest hit by COVID-19 and the lockdown restrictions. Joining me now to talk about this is Tourism Business Council of South Africa's CEO, Chifiwa Chivengwa. Chifiwa, good to have you tonight on the Newsfeed Late Night. Good evening.
Good evening to you, and thank you for having me.
Well, I mean, it is the right kind of intervention that one would see. It does two things. Firstly, it brings about the recovery. That's what the president says. But the second thing is that it brings about transformation. But one has a question around the timing of it. There is no tourism generally happening anyway in the world, with the United States now having locked down more countries, South Africa itself having closed its border under lockdown level 3. There's not much tourism. Is this money going to be used properly? I mean, is it going to go to good use?
No, absolutely. We do hope that it gets used properly because the issue of transformation has been on the agenda for the past 26 years in terms of transforming tourism in a way that, it's inclusive, and there are many new people that come into the sector, especially, Black entrepreneurs, to bring in new experiences and, buy into assets and so forth and so on. So from our side, we don't think that there is any specific time to talk about transformation, but any time, we need to talk about transformation because this is a legacy issue. It's been hanging for a long time. And we need to talk about it at any different time to make sure that there's participation from previously disadvantaged entrepreneurs and individuals, and to ensure that we do realize the benefits of tourism across the board and across the entire value chain and within the community that we live with. So, one can argue about the timing, but from my side, any day, it's a good day to talk about transformation in this country.
How can we derive the best benefit out of this investment? Considering that there are other things that still have not been done, particularly when you talk of the COVID-19 situation. We still don't have a clear plan as how the vaccination rollout is actually going to happen, never mind how we're going to procure the necessary vaccines.
Look, one thing that tourism, has done for many, many years is that we are resilient. And, we have survived, September, 11th. We've survived wars. We've survived many other diseases across the continent and across the world. And we've always came up, on top. So what we ought to do now is to say that, yes, we do understand that we are within the COVID time. And we do understand that there are certain aspects within COVID that still needs to be done to ensure that there's sustainability within the industry. But, discussing about transformation, means that, now, through this fund, we have another vehicle whereby those entrepreneurs who wants to get into the market can bring in new experiences. One thing that we've done for many years, we have sold same experiences to international tourists and to domestic tourists. And what we need to do now is to diversify and find new experiences, new assets, and, pretty much sit down and curate the experiences to make sure that we do attract new tourists coming from many different countries so that we can have a good yield in terms of, income and making sure that we employ more people within tourism. So it is important that we talk about it. It's important that we bring in, new entrepreneurs. It's important that we support, the entrepreneurs that have been in the industry for many, many years, and they are being supported through many other funds, that are available. And for us, this is just one way to say, let's deepen transformation. Let's ensure that there's new experiences. Let's diversify. Let's bring in the culture aspect. Let's bring in, the tradition aspect. Let's bring in the food aspect and many other things that we've never sold and that people are yearning. When they want to come to South Africa, they say, give us something new. So we need people who can bring something new onto the table that we're able to market and that we're able to put into the international markets and as well as the domestic market.
How do we avoid a similar situation as that of the bank guarantee scheme with very poor uptake, but largely SMMEs feeling this is inaccessible? How do we avoid that kind of challenge with this fund?
Look, you're quite correct with the government bank guarantee loan scheme. And it's something that we're going to be discussing tomorrow through NetLeg to make sure that we open it up for many people, many entrepreneurs to be able to access it. Because at the moment, the way it's structured, It's not a scheme that a lot of people can access. But for this scheme, we have to make sure that we understand tourism and we understand where we are. This is not something that is going to yield, income, in the next year or two. This is a long-term investment. And when we put money into this, we've got to make sure that we're putting this in a long term. Because for many, many years, we've sort of put money into a 3-year program or 5-year program. This is long term. We know that the 2 or 3 year don't work because tourism is a relationship business, especially when you go overseas and even here in the domestic market. You've got to make sure that you're dealing with the right people that will bring you the right business. And it's not something that can be dealt with, in the next year or so. It's a long-term investment. We need to be patient, and in the next while, it's going to start to have some results. And also, it requires sustainability in terms of being supported by government in terms of procuring from those establishments, and also to support those that are getting into this business when they go overseas. It's not something that you just do overnight. They've got to be supported. They've got to build relationship. We've got to be there with them. We've got to hold their hands. It's not something that can be done in 2 or 3 years because the overseas market looks at whether you can deliver on what they're looking for or not. They don't look at what we look at, here in South Africa. So there's a lot of things that we ought to look at and a lot of things that we have to do. And there's a lot of mentorship that has to go with this to make sure that it's sustainable. We don't want a situation whereby we launch a fund and, in the next 5 years, we say, well, there's nothing that happened with the fund. We have to do the right thing.
Will it go far enough? I mean, the president also saying at the launch that the tourism industry is a capital-intensive sector, 1.7 billion. If you look at the relief that was issued to the tourism sector now during lockdown level 5, many said, well, look, this amount is just not going to go far enough.
Look, it's a small fund, provided that it's going to be out there for the next 3 years, and hopefully it's going to be recapitalized for the other 3 years, and it's going to be ongoing. So it's not a lot of money, if you look at the entire value chain of the industry, and if you look at the assets that the industry have and the experiences and many other things, that formulate the tourism industry. So the president did acknowledge that this is a small fund, and it is a small fund, 1.2 billion over 3 years. You're looking at supporting many entrepreneurs. Nonetheless. But in terms of buying big assets, it is a small fund. But again, there are other funds that are out there that are administered by other developmental institutions, whereby one has to look and make sure that we can pull together all these funds to ensure that one can go into a higher bracket of buying those big assets. Again, it's a small fee. It's a good start. And we do hope that there's an uptake from entrepreneurs. We do hope that the township, the rural tourism establishments, and the rural tourism entrepreneurs can come on board. They can present proposals whereby we may develop new experiences that we can market locally and internationally. And hopefully, as time goes, we will be able to be sustainable. But it's a small fee. Yeah. It's not going to buy a hotel group or a large tourism company, but again, it's going to encourage tourism entrepreneurs to come on board, and those that have run away from tourism because of the pandemic to consider tourism.
CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, Chifiwa Chivenga, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us.